former police commissioner, 2018 to 2021, and also the political leader of the National Transformation Alliance, Mr. Gary Griffith. Mr. Gary Griffith, how you doing, sir?
Hey, not too bad. I haven't seen you for a
And,
year,
and,
for the
and
whole
I,
year.
I keep saying this, Mr. Griffith. Every time I see you, you look younger. Like I go down and you look younger every time. It must be something in the water. What is it?
Well,
You,
whatever it
you,
is,
you
thank
working
God
for
for
you, man.
that.
You working for you. Definitely, definitely, definitely.
Thanks.
So, Mr. Griffith, let's go right in, right? Because I want some clarification. You are the political leader of the National Transformation Alliance, newly formed political organization in Trinidad and Tobago. Tell us about that political organization, that political party.
Sure. Good evening to your many viewers and listeners. The National Transformation Alliance is yet another political vehicle in Trinidad and Tobago that is there to represent what is known as the bridge constituency. Whereas, most countries in the world, there will always be two major political parties. In Trinidad and Tobago, that third major political party has always been there since probably I'd say 1981, known as the ONR, the Organization for National
Yeah,
Reconstruction. The third, because of our situation of the first past the post rather than proportional representation, it makes it very difficult for that third party to win an election. It's similar to the Democrats and the Republicans, and again, throughout the Caribbean, two major political parties. However, in Trinidad and Tobago, that bridge constituency, those voters who are independent, who are not PNM till they die or are born a UNC and have a die a UNC, where both political parties have 200,000 odd of those persons. Their political leaders could shoot someone in cold blood downtown and they will still blindly vote for that political party. They will find an excuse to
right,
justify it. That's how they are. And again, same thing with Republicans, Democrats. That is their right. That is their business. I'm not here to
right,
criticize them. That's their lifestyle. But there will always be that 100 to 150,000 floating voters, independent voters, persons who make decisions on election day based on ideologies, principles, vision, ethics, policies, the party that may have the political will to transform a country. And that started in 1981 with the ONR with 91,000 votes. 10 years later, it became the NAR, of which Kamala Prasad Bissessar was a part of, and she went up against the UNC. They got
hmm
127,000 votes. 2007, it turned into the Congress of the People, which is when I started my political career. They got 148,000 votes. And now, 17 years later, yet again, we have this political vehicle known as the National Transformation Alliance. But let me not be greedy to believe and state that the NTA is the only third party political vehicle. There are two or three others, or several
right,
others, I should say, and they represent that bridge constituency. The important thing is what we do and what we decide dictates the outcome of the election. That has been a fact since
right,
1981. If those political parties go on their own, we have seen at times it will cause the PNM to win by a larger margin, as in 1981, 1991, and 2007. When these political vehicles form a strategic alliance with another political party, it spells automatic annihilation for the PNM, as in 1986 when the ULF joined with the ONR, in 2010 when the COP
right,
joined with the UNC. So it shows what happens. The UNC, on the other hand, have never been able to win a general election on their own in a three-horse race in the 36 years in existence. And there's not knocking the UNC. The UNC arguably may have just as many supporters as the PNM, but how our constituencies are laid out, they cannot win the marginal seats without the support of that bridge constituency party. So the NT, what we have done, we have formed this political party. We have done well. We actually went in the local government election after just a few months, and we went after the 31 safest PNM seats, 31 seats that the UNC never won on their own, ever. These are the PNM usually wins about 60 to 70 seats out of the 141 in local government. Those are the 31 safest seats, and every single one that of those seats, the NTA cut by 30 to almost 80% the gap of what the PNM had over the UNC. So we went into the belly of the beast. We were the kamikazes. And we had seats that the PNM would have won by 1,300 votes. We brought it down to less than 180. Not one of our candidates lost their deposit. So we were very competitive. We did what was required, working with the UNC. It ensured 70,000 more votes than the
right.
PNM combined in that local government election. For some reason, Kamala Prasad Visesa has other ideas. It would obviously spell total defeat for the UNC if they decide to go alone. They have never been able to win alone. But that is her business. The PNM, they have their business going on with a civil war with persons trying to anoint people as if the PNM is a cow you could just hand over. That is not how democracy works. And Dr. Keith Rowley will understand that the hard way very soon when that civil war starts with him, his recent anointment of Stuart Young. But that is the UNC and the PNM's business. My business is to lead and serve that bridge constituency to make sure they will be properly
Right.
represented.
But do you caucus more with the UNC or the PNM?
Do I, sorry?
The NTA, does it caucus more or align itself more with the UNC or the PNM?
Well, at this time, with none whatsoever, none of the above. Kamala Prasad Visesa made it known emphatically that she wants to have nothing to do with the NTA, and she may have good reason for it because I stand on principle. Certain things that I do it will be non-negotiable. I actually was removed as a Minister of National Security because I stood on principle under her own government when people were trying to influence me to say the wrong thing, and I said no, I'm not going to lie. If I have enough information and there's information that the police will require to assist them in an investigation, don't ask me to lie to protect anyone. That is my standard. That is my style. I stood up against a prime minister as commissioner of police when there was pressure being put on me by a government to try to put more emphasis in trying to align the police to investigate political opponents. And I said the police will not be used as a political tool. So I've stood up against two political leaders, stood up against two prime ministers, fired on both occasions. And that is what the country wants to see. They want to see persons who have that political will. So at this time, the NTA, we have absolutely no alignment with the UNC or the PNM. We are, however, have signed MOU with the Congress of the People. We have been having negotiations with other political parties such as Hope, unions, other NGOs. So what we are forming is a proper system for good governance, not a political marriage of convenience. We've been there, we've done that. The NTA could easily join with the UNC tomorrow and we'll defeat the PNM. But then what? That's not what the country wants. The country wants to ensure that if there's some degree of accommodation, it's going to be sustained, it's going to be effective, it's going to be genuine. I have demanded of the UNC is that it's going to be non-negotiable. I am not going to stand firm to allow anything similar to the live sport disaster that took place in the People's Partnership government. I stood up as the only government official against live sport, whilst all of them were banging tables saying long live live sport. I was showing 400 million that was pumped in the wrong direction, misused, and was a conduit towards criminal activity with persons actually being killed. I stood up against that. I'm not going to allow it. I saw persons who were aligned to the PNM, they jumped ship and joined the UNC, but when we were in government, this individual was given massive contracts to criminal elements, even to build police stations. And I said, this is madness. I am not going to allow it. There are other individuals who, based on our intelligence, have been aligned with gang members in negotiations for state contracts. So those things, I said, if you want me to be part of your government, I am not going to condone it. I am not going to allow it. It is non-negotiable. And I think that is where the problem lies. They started saying, well, Gary Griffith cannot be controlled. And she is correct. I'm not a dog. I'm not a child. I am not here to be controlled. I'm here to ensure that I adhere to my oath in office. And if you do the wrong thing, I am going to expose it. That is what the country needs. The country wants that type of good governance. This is not a lodge that people must do the wrong thing and must blindly turn a blind eye. That is what has destroyed Trinidad and Tobago for the last few decades. Political party after political party, government after government. My intention is to make sure with the transformation of Trinidad and Tobago, there must be a high degree of ethics, principles, ideologies. And if it is that other political parties embrace that, then we would more than be willing to have conversations with them.
So are you set up in a way, and this is a segment where I'm just trying to understand your political organization. Are you set up in a way with candidates sufficient enough that would go strongly against the two big political organization, or you are more like a stopgap measure to prevent this one from getting complete autonomy? Are you more set up just to stop Black, or are you set up to really win an election?
Well, really win, because I just saw, like, for example, Anna Ramsabad or something, Annette Ramba Singh, probably a UNC till she die or whatever. She says Gary Griffith couldn't reduce crime. Well, lady, if it is that you don't read, you don't write, I have to draw photos for you. The fact is, Anna Ramba Singh, it seemed that because of your ignorance in understanding what happens in Trinidad and Tobago, it was the highest reduction in violent crime in 17 years. every major crime was reduced by 35 to 85%. My last year as Commissioner of Police, there were 342 murders compared to 2 times this amount. Now, public trust and confidence in the police service was 59%, now it's 8%. Public trust in the Commissioner of Police was 79%, now it is 6%. Crime was the number 4 concern behind health, education, and the economy. Now it's the number 1. So, Annette Rambasing, you need to read and educate yourself before you make stupid comments to say that I could not control crime. We were doing what was required. Unfortunately, it was Stuart Young who was appointed that decided to do his own thing, and the country is now paying the political price. So these NTA, what we are here is to show, I think the main thing that the country is going to be concerned with, the reason I brought this up at this time, other than educating the stupid comment by Annette Rambasing, and I'll keep calling her name to expose her ignorance and not even understanding what happens in Trinidad and Tobago, is the fact that the majority of Trinidad and Tobago citizens will vote for a political party that can provide them with their most fundamental right, which is safety and security. So what we are going to do is to show that we have the people, the principles, the policies, and the political will to provide them with that degree of safety and security. You look at the 3 political leaders now, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, Gary Griffith, and even Stuart Young. Look at them, look at their qualification, their experience, their knowledge. And it is not just about national security. The NTA is not a national security party. The same principles that we use to transform the police service and to reduce crime, using principles such as leadership, accountability, management, and measuring performance, we can do the same to lift the standard of every arm of the public service, be it health, education, the economy, social development, sport, culture, tourism, youth development. All of that can be done, but there have never been proper principles like that. After I left as Commissioner of Police, those principles in the police service collapsed, and now we're seeing the end result. So that is where the NTA stands. We are not here to deliberately split the vote, as they call that. I don't know what that ever means. They say split the vote, you'll cause the PNM to win. So we are not here to do that, but we are also not here to be any puppy dog to be used by any major political party to get our supporters to vote for your candidates, for you to have a 21-seat UNC government, and then we have no say. That's exactly what happened in 2010 to 2015. The UNC got 21 seats, the COP got 6, and the top from Tobago got 2. The UNC then realized we have 21 seats. We can do what we want. We can hire people, fire people, make any decision, put any contract, give gangs state contracts, and there's nothing that the Congress of the People could have done. The COP was destroyed. They got 148,000 votes, and they moved to 467 votes because of that. I have no intention to disrespect or to have that bridge constituency ever used again.
So let's talk about the crime statistic from 2018 to 2021, right? That's under your tenure as Commissioner of Police. We had from 2018, right, at 34 was 34, and that's the statistic that I'm reading here. So you could correct me if my statistic here is wrong. 34.36% an increase from 2017. From 28, that's 2018. Now 2019, right? That's your full year in office. It was the same, right? Again, an increase. Well, a marginal increase. In 2020, we had a decline. Now, a lot of people said that that's because of COVID, but you could correct that statistic here for us. And 2021, when you left, it was at 29. It was, again, increase from 2020, but a decrease from 2018 and 2019. So tell us about that statistic there. Because when you say it was the lowest, we see increase, decrease in 2020, and increase back in 2021. So help us understand.
Oh, no. Remember, my term was August 2018 to August 2021.
Right.
So in August 2018, I inherited a police service that was totally demoralized, no motivation, lack of resources, lack of training, lack of 21st century policing, lack of the use of technology. Anybody who is foolish enough to believe that someone could transform that within a month, within 2 months, within a year, then you're really as dumb as you think, as you look. There's absolutely no way. So it took me at least 18 months to be able to motivate the police service, implement technology, new units, systems, equipment, training, transforming the police service, making sure where we have 90% of the police officers were in stations. I had to change it to 90% of the police officers were out in the streets, using the type of equipment and technology we had, such as GPS tracking, body cameras, tasers, pepper spray, put in specific patrols, undercover officers, which was never been there before, gender-based violence units, social media monitoring unit. being able to work with the NYPD to bring in training to lift the morale, the motivation, public relation, customer service. That took 18 months to do. So if for several years there was a constant increase in crime, back at the ranch, it took me 18 months to get that transformed. The transformation was completed just about January 2020. So it took me about a year and 3 months. So when people make this ridiculous comment, and this is where it is so good to see now, when they say, well, no, the reason why crime decrease was because of COVID. So let me just clarify certain things. And I've said it over and over. And when they keep saying it, they probably press mute because they don't want to hear the truth, because they cannot handle the truth. In February and March 2020, without COVID, state of emergency, public health regulations, crime decreased dramatically. It was the safest carnival in Trinidad and Tobago. How could there be carnival in 2020 if there was COVID? There was no COVID at that period. We formed the National Operations Center, the Emergency Response Patrol, the Special Operation Unit, GPS tracking. All of these things pegged back criminals. It made people feel safe. It took away the perception and fear of crime. And there was no COVID. So the turnaround started before COVID. When COVID took place, for people to state that people stopped killing, raping, kidnapping because of COVID, I don't know if it is that they spoke to criminals and said, well, you're not going to rape because I'm afraid of COVID, and I'm going to kidnap because of COVID. If that is the case, all the criminals in Jamaica and Guyana, for example, they missed the memo, because crime actually escalated during COVID. When you look at most cities in the United States, New York, Boston, LA, Detroit, Chicago, every city, there was a dramatic increase in crime. Why? Because when you have, this is not everyday thing of state of emergency with heavy policing and roadblocks and all that. That's not what we had in Trinidad and Tobago or around the world. What you had is, when you have situations like COVID, businesses will close. When businesses close, people lose their jobs. When people lose their jobs, there'll be unemployment. When there's unemployment, there's going to be a high degree of cost of living will go up. Prices would go up. The economy will be affected. Losing job is a byproduct towards people committing crime. They'll have problems with domestic violence, with people remaining at home. So all of those things is what caused a drastic increase. So to the jokers who claim that because of COVID, crime goes down, I guess every single criminal in Detroit, Boston, LA, New York, Chicago, Jamaica, Guyana, they missed that memo. And then after COVID, those same places I spoke about, there was a dramatic decrease in crime. So what happened is that they missed that memo. Additionally, when I left in August or September 2021, in October, November of that same year, it was the first and third highest number of murders in the history of Trinidad and Tobago during the state of emergency, during the public health regulations, during COVID. So during curfew? So what is it that the criminals decided? Well, we will just bypass the unwritten law that we're not supposed to kill and rape and murder because there was still COVID. So how come during COVID, when I wasn't there, crime escalated to the point of the first and third highest number of murders in the history of Trinidad and Tobago? So that was just thrown out the window. The fact of the matter is that what was put in place made people feel safe. And this is what we intend to do again: reignite the systems, the policies, the units, the technology, all of which have been dismantled, shut down because of petty politics.
Yeah. So what was it in particular? Did the criminals decided that, oh, Gary is not there after 2021, so 2022, you know what? Back on the road and committing crime again? Because we see here in statistics from the crime, we see here in 2021, there was, right after COVID, there was then an increase. And you left in 2021. Was it that the system was dismantled after you left that caused it to skyrocket again?
Yeah, definitely. A good leader is one that when he or she departs, the success and the productivity should remain the same. But you can't blame the leader if it is that everything they put in place, you shut down. As I said, we had a National Operations Center, it was shut down, an Operational Command Center, a Commissioner's Command Center. We had mobile scanners with vehicles that can pinpoint and find illegal weapons. We had the gender-based violence unit, the social media monitoring unit, GPS tracking on vehicles, the emergency response patrol, the special operation response team. We had the minimum use of force policy with tasers, pepper spray, body cameras, public relation training. We had I-support over service, getting the private sector to assist and work with the police services. We had online reporting, we had the police app, we had technology that put an end to kidnapping. When you hear about police now saying, oh, they solved the kidnapping, they didn't solve the kidnapping. The person actually either escaped or they paid the ransom. In our era, using technology was the first time in the history of the Caribbean that kidnappers were actually being pinpointed, doors being broken into, cars being intercepted, apprehended the kidnappers, and releasing and freeing the victims. It's things you saw in the movie. 12 consecutive occasions. Never happened before, never happened after. That is what put an end to kidnapping for ransom. That's what put an end to home invasion. That's what put an end to extortion. Because for the first time ever, we had covert operatives. NYPD has 35,000 odd police officers. At least 10% of them, the other 90% do not know. They drive taxis, they sell hot dogs, they are vagrants in the street, they work as undercover sleeper cells, moles, whatever you call it. We never had that until I became commissioner. Putting undercover persons who the rest of the police officers did not even know were police officers. And they were able to tell me, this police officer controls this drug block. This police officer is using his vehicle to escort criminals to be sure that they will not be stopped in roadblocks. When I started doing polygraph testing, drug testing, transferring officers, firing officers, charging officers, everything that I put, all of those things, it was shut down, it was dismantled, officers were returned to the locations, they were controlling their drug blocks, the mess started. And this is not in any way to discredit the police service. Out of those 7,000, there was probably just about 5% odd would be rogue, and it happens all over the world. There's no perfect police service. What you have to do is to pinpoint the rogue elements and make their life uncomfortable, to either get them suspended, charged, or to reassign them to a desk job where they cannot do any damage. So those were the things that would have been done, and the country started feeling safer. They felt safer. Unfortunately, because of lack of competence by those who followed me, earlier Christopher, for example, when we were tested by the Police Service Commission in 2018, the previous system would have been by qualified experts. That experts from the United Kingdom, that they have selected commissioners in 20 odd countries around the world. I acquired 82%. She got 52%. She didn't even come in the top 20. She just did not have it. They understood that. 3 years later, when I reapplied, I got 94%. She got 20% less. She did not have it. But then this was the problem. When you have a prime minister who handpicks a president, who handpicks a police service commission, she brought in Judith Jones and others. And they decided to put a lady who didn't come in the top 20 and placed her first. So she was imposed upon Trinidad and Tobago, where she never had the capability. She was not tactical. She was not strategic. She was not operational. And there's no problem. That's not a fault of hers. Not everyone is a Rambo or somebody who is very tactical to know how to deal with operations. Stephen Williams, likewise. They wear gabardine. They hold a cane. They love to stay in the 6th floor and read. They're able to deal with an SOE, for example, the present state of emergency. If you're not tactical and strategic, it will cause problems. So those were the problems, but my point is that this can't turn around. It's not difficult. It's just to reboot, reignite, and reload all of the systems, the units, the technology that would have all been dismantled and shut down, either based on pettiness or just natural ignorance and understanding 21st century.
But what about that transitional period, right? So you left in 2021. If these systems work so well, why was it dismantled? Is it
that has been the problem in Trinidad and Tobago for years, not just about the police service, but the government. So the PNM would have, under Patrick Manning, that man had a brilliant vision. I mean, I really got to hand it to him. Patrick Manning, as the Prime Minister of the PNM, what he did, he was transforming Trinidad and Tobago into the 21st century policing. The things that he was pushing, some of the things we have been outdated. So instead of a Goodyear blimp that was doing monitoring, I was bringing in drones. Welcome to the 21st century. Having the type of drones that could go 2 kilometers in the air, turn night into day, lock onto a vehicle. But at least Patrick Manning got somewhere. He had the blimp. He had the special anti-crime unit with 1,000 odd persons. Yes, it was the highest number of kidnappings, the highest number of murders in the history of the country. But he had a concept. I took that and piggyback and formed the Special Operation Response Team. And that unit put fear into the criminals. It rocked them back. He then tried to get the offshore patrol vessels. But again, the cost of that was 2.4 billion. I was able to cut that in half to get the same type of vessels required to secure our borders, inclusive of our exclusive economic zone. But when the government changed, they removed the blimp, they removed the OPVs, they removed SOT. That is what governments do, shut down and dismantle, because they will keep a legacy and it may make us look bad. Same thing happened in 2015 when I left as Minister of National Security and the PNM government took over. Everything I put in place, such as the Rapid Response Unit, Community Comfort Patrol, the National Operations Center, everything was shut down and dismantled. That's what they do. So when I was commissioner and it was seen that Gary is not a PNM boy, instructions were given to remove and dismantle everything because it might have a Gary Griffith stigma on it and it may not make us look good. So you shut down and remove this. But at what cost? Now, the one major thing that is going to remove this government is crime. So instead of thinking out of the box and utilizing stuff that made the country feel safe, you have now removed it out of political pettiness that this is Gary Griffith's thing and he's not one of us. He's not a PNM. He's not supporter of the PNM, so let's remove it. So you remove that and you bring Earl Christopher, who does not have a clue what to do to reduce crime. And now they are paying the price. But more importantly, it is the country that is paying the price. This is that last year has been the darkest year for Trinidad and Tobago. And the country has suffered. But with moving from, as I said, 342 murders in my last year to almost double, just 3 years later, almost double. We can cut this. We can bring this back. But it requires persons to stop getting involved in the politics and just do what is right for the country.
Yeah, because we've seen, as I said earlier, we see in 2024, the crime statistic there recorded over 623 murders, and that is a lot, right? Let's talk about the crime trend. Now, over the past 5 years, how has the crime statistic in Trinidad and Tobago evolved? And what are the key factors behind the rise in crime over the past 5 years?
Well, again, I think the biggest problem has always been since 2006, where politicians decided to sleep with the devil. When you play with filthy animals, you would get fleas. What am I speaking about? Government giving gang members state contracts. It has been a big problem in Trinidad and Tobago. Government after government, political party after political party, from the PNM to the UNC back to the PNM. I have fought it down as Minister of National Security with live sport, with that same person who's now a senior person in the UNC giving a gang member a contract to build a police station. That is sheer madness. Anywhere in the world, we'll say that we're a banana republic. And that person has been fighting me down constantly, not wanting the UNC to work with me. And then Kamala cries and says, oh, God, Gary's bad talking her. And that is Kamala's business with, I'm not going to call Jillian John's name or anything like that. But I am not here to cast anything on anyone. My concern is we cannot and must not allow criminal elements to get state contracts. That is unacceptable. That has been the problem. That is what has caused many persons who have been involved in criminal activity. You give you 10 million TT to build a $1 million box drain, and you take the $9 million, you don't use it to help your community, you don't use it to help the persons around you. You take that 9 million profit to buy more sophisticated illegal firearms, hire more gang members, use it to buy more drugs, be able to control more drug blocks, and use the profit to pay off police officers and others who may have an aspect in the criminal justice system, because now you have profit. And it builds the enterprise. The enterprise is now built where the criminal justice system members, the police officers, they all in the take. Which is why when I put the undercover police officers, I found out which police officers were controlling drug blocks, what they were doing. They even reached a point where there were 6 police officers who deliberately tried to lie to say that I tried to threaten to kill a prisoner in a cell. And these were the officers who were pinpointed by certain units that were involved, because they realized I was transferring them from certain places at St. James and Diego Martin to move them to other locations because they were controlling drug blocks. And they made this up, not realizing the person who I was speaking to was one of my operatives, one of my covert elements. And he did a sworn affidavit to say that these police officers came to him and met with him, and they asked him to lie in the hope that I could be arrested for trying to see that of me trying to commit grievous bodily harm to him. They didn't realize. So that could have been anybody else, and I would have been in prison because of these police officers. That's how dangerous it is. So the problem lies with, again, politicians, persons they are in influential positions, using their position to give gangs state contracts. And then when the gangs do this, it builds them. And then the politicians, sometimes they believe that by doing this, it helps us win an election. And it does not happen, because when you give them these promises, you promise them these contracts, and then when you get in government, there's a price to pay, and the price to pay are lives that are lost. Lives that are lost because these gangs, they kill each other, they involve in drugs, human trafficking, money laundering, illegal weapons entering the country. All of these different things, it's a byproduct that will cause an increase in crime. So my take on it is a no-nonsense approach. Even this present Prime Minister and the outgoing Prime Minister, Keith Rowley, he said There's nothing that can stop persons from applying to get state contracts because they are not convicted. And I told him there was utter stupidity by that comment, because it is similar to stating that if somebody is targeted by the CIA or Secret Service as being a member of the Al Qaeda or being a terrorist, you're saying, well, so it means that he has a right to be in the White House. You don't do it. You target the persons,
True.
and you do not give them the opportunity by saying, because we have not yet charged you, it gives you the right to get as much taxpayers' money as possible, knowing fully well what they intend to do with the profit. So that has been the biggest problem. It has continued to build and intensify from all of these different things, from the live sport, Color Me Orange, CPEP, URP, all of these different fancy names, Eastern Port of Spain. They do all of this, and it provides an opportunity. And sometimes the politicians, in fairness to them, they feel by giving them these funds, it will cause them to calm down. It doesn't, because as soon as the funds run out, they're going to come and put hits again on other gang members. They're going to demand more. And then you are now forced to do it because you have now decided to sleep with the devil.
Wow. Guys, we're chatting here with Gary Griffith, and we're talking about crime. Gary, I want to switch a little bit to youth crime, impact on youth violence, right? What role is youth gang and unemployment play in the rising crime in Trinidad and Tobago at this point?
Well, definitely. I mean, the problem that exists right now is obviously unemployment is a factor. Many young men are frustrated. They are demoralized. They are not getting a proper opportunity. Listen, we got people here with degrees in Trinidad and Tobago that can't get a job. And this is not a justification for persons to commit crime. But again, when persons, they are frustrated, they feel they have no way out. Crime is a product of opportunity. The greater the deterrent, the less likelihood persons would commit crime, because there's a greater possibility of them being apprehended. When it is you're unemployed, you're frustrated, you feel that nobody is caring for you, you're going to find some people, some of them will find an opportunity. The gang members become the Robin Hoods in some of these communities. They tell the young persons, look, nobody cares about you, nobody's looking after your interests, come across by me. All you need to do is to drop that package. All you need to do is to stand up there as a lead scout for me. All you need to do is to come with me in a vehicle. And then all of a sudden they get something, and they go home now. The parents, the big brother, the father, the mother sees them with wads of $100 bills. They don't ask how you got it. There's no degree of concern, because now you're helping the home pay bills which they probably need, because they can't pay their mortgage, they can't pay the electricity bill. So based on desperation, people turn to crime. And this is not in any way to justify it. Turning to crime is there's no excuse. But this has become a major problem. Which is why one of the things I always say is that sport is a major factor that can unite a country. It is a major factor that can change a young person away from crime. It is known as secondary crime prevention, where you find avenues to turn the energies of young persons away from crime, whether it is education, health, and sport. We formed that the Commissioner's Cup, where I was saying, listen, you all want to have your battles, do it on the football field. And we had gang rivalry of football tournament, the Commissioner's Cup, 2 different communities with different gangs, and the gang members are there watching young persons on the football field, and the gangs started uniting, watching that their sons were playing against other sons of other gangs, and they realized, wait a minute, we're fighting a war, killing you, and our children are out there having a good time. And those are the things that could unite a country. I recall in 2006, the only time we qualified for the World Cup final, I think for about 2 weeks, there was not a murder. The country was united. Unfortunately, politicians have divided the country, and we have not really put forward a proper emphasis to try to get young persons away from a life of crime. Sport, as I said, has been the bastard ministry in Trinidad and Tobago for decades. I think myself, Anil Roberts, Gary Hunt, probably 3 or 4 of us have ever put on a Trinidad and Tobago uniform or represented our country internationally in sport for us to understand. So many politicians in Trinidad and Tobago have never kicked a line in Caribbean slang, and they do not understand the importance of sport. They do not understand the importance of getting young persons to burn their energies away from a life of crime. And sport as well develops a young person in so many things. It's not just about playing a sport. There are character traits in sport such as uniformity, leadership, punctuality, teamwork, not giving up. All of these different things, tactics, strategy, that is what sport is. Sport can transform you from being a delinquent into being somebody who is organized, who's strategic, who's punctual, who is uniformed, who can work with others, who can work in a team. And that helps you in your job. That is why on most occasions, persons who play sport, they have a better ability in their composure, how they operate, even in their health. Instead of just drinking alcohol, lying on the block, you're focused on trying to stay fit, stay healthy. And that is one of the things I intend to do. And I intend to make sport a major core ministry, similar to what you see in Europe, where sport is a core curricular activity rather than
How
extracurricular.
about the police resources? Is the police force adequately equipped with resources to tackle the growing problem?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the excuse you will always have is the work when he didn't have the proper tools. What earlier Christopher and McDonald Jacob did not do is be able to, you have to run the police service as a business. In Trinidad and Tobago, we acquired the police service, it's about 3 billion TT. That's 3,000 million TT per annum. Probably about one third of that is salaries. So when you look at that other 2,000 million, I mean, you're talking about over 300 million US dollars just to deal with paying bills. And what I did is I turned the police service into a business. So, for example, we have 110 police stations. Every station, every light will be on throughout 24/7. When at night, they will just be the bottom floor with the officers on duty. Turn off all the lights on the sixth floor. We were able to save tens of millions of dollars in electricity. Over time corruption, we found out that 200 or 300 police officers claimed they were working 24 hours a day, 30 days a month, making 10,000 US a month when they should be making 10 times less that. That saved us over 50 million US in corruption. I was able to use that annually. I was able to use that 50 million in corruption by persons falsely making claim that they were working 30 days a month, 24 hours a day. That 50 million was able to assist me to get things that never before the police had without asking the government for a cent extra. That is purchasing 110 vehicles for the emergency response patrol, getting GPS tracking on every police vehicle, monitoring their area of responsibility, having training for customer service training, forming a gender-based violence unit, building a police app, putting body cameras, giving police officers tasers, giving them pepper spray for minimum use of force. All of these different things were done without needing a cent extra from the government. So it requires turning the police service into a business, utilizing the funds in a proper manner, taking away wastage, and reallocating those resources towards pumping it in all of the many things that
So
the
you're
police
saying that
require.
there is, are you saying that there's still a lot of corruption within the police force? And how prevalent is that issue?
Well, there will always be, as I said, there will always be. It is the onus is on the commissioner of police. The first thing I did, for example, simple example, you don't just blindly accuse the police service of being corrupt. But if it is that there's enough intelligence, you deal with it. So, in, for example, a perfect example, in our southwestern peninsula, the southwestern peninsula, there were several police stations, and there's a strong perception that police officers there, they were allowing the illegal entry of human trafficking, drugs, and illegal weapons from the South American mainland to enter Trinidad and Tobago, and they were allowing it to happen. We got the information, and all I did was straightforward. I went to certain police stations and I asked all of them, I want you to do a polygraph test. It is straightforward. Do you financially benefit from the illegal entry of weapons, human trafficking, and drugs entering Trinidad and Tobago? Yes or no? I wasn't asking a trick question. There was one station with 13 police officers. 12 of them refused to be polygraphed. So you knew what happened. Now you can't discipline them, but what I did is I transferred them to the middle of Trinidad to put you where it is you wouldn't cause the problem. And those are the things that cause problems. For example, again, just like when it is asked you to be polygraphed because I realize I have information you're running drug blocks. You don't want to be polygraphed, I send you from Diego Martin and send you down to San Fernando. These individuals are those who got whispered. They have their PNM party card. They whispered to politicians, we need to get rid of Gary, this, that, and the other. And the politicians took the bait. And again, even Dr. Keith Rowley and others, are fully aware that they got set up because the police officers wanted to get back in their hole on the southwestern peninsula to allow the illegal drugs. They wanted to get back at the drug blocks to be able to control the drug blocks. They wanted to get back the use of vehicles to escort criminal elements so they wouldn't be stopped. They wanted to get back the format for them to be able to claim overtime. They wanted to get back to be able to blackmail persons for firearms, which I put a stop to by making sure I open the market to prevent corruption through supply and demand. So the small percentage of police officers, they got the opportunity by removing me to get back their trade because it was a multi-million dollar corruption enterprise.
I want to move full steam ahead with what's happening today. We had Trinidad and Tobago news brief. Uh, Breaking news: Trinidad and Tobago declare a state of emergency after a weekend of violence. A spate of murders has taken the Caribbean island. A total of 623 in 2024, in which nearly half of is gang related and almost all linked to organized crime. How the hell did we get here to that point? No, big numbers.
And again, when we hear the word state of emergency,
Yeah.
I don't know how it is throughout the Caribbean, but as soon as you hear state of emergency in Trinidad and Tobago, it's like, oh my God, this is something terrible. There are countries and cities and counties around the world. If there's a forest fire or a flood, you call a state of emergency. But in Trinidad and Tobago, the concept of a state of emergency is usually something that deprives you of your constitutional right, which has usually been the case. We had roughly 5 states of emergencies over the last few decades, from 1970. Then 1990, the attempted coup. 1995, when Patrick Manning used it to put the House Speaker under house arrest. Then in 2011, and then we moved on to 2019 for a very small period during COVID, and now this state of emergency. My take on it, it should never have happened had we continued with the same process and procedure, because as I said, my last year, we put it down to 340 murders. The concept I had was that every year we'll reduce murders by 20%. So the next year would have gone down to about 270. The next year would have gone down to 230. And then by this time now, which is 3 years from now, we would have been less than 200 murders, which is perfect for when I say perfect, ideal for a country that is littered with over 10,000 illegal firearms out there. If we could bring the murder rate down to less than 200. The best we ever had would have been just less than about roughly 100 in 1999 by Basilio Pandey when he was prime minister, and arguably the best minister of national security the country ever had, which was Brigadier General Joseph Theodore, who was my chief of defense staff when I was a young lieutenant. I learned a lot from him, similar to Brigadier Carl Alfonso, Commodore Franklin, Admiral Kelshol. I looked at a lot of these leaders, looked at what they did and how they operated. Had we kept that concept of the things we put in place in 2018 to 2021, there would be no need for a state of emergency. We allowed the gate to be open, and now we're trying to close the door. It's too late now. My take on it is a state of emergency is not and should not be used as a crime fighting tool. I advised the Prime Minister in 2011 when I was the National Security Advisor, when she recommended that we do it. I said it is not going to work. It is not a crime fighting tool. It is a stopgap measure. Every single thing that is being done now in the state of emergency could be done without a state of emergency. By forming a National Operations Center, you can have a national security alert state from green to amber to red to black, escalating the alert state based on the threat assessment, similar to what you will see in other countries in the world to deal with terrorism and other activities. None of those things were done. And what you're having now with a state of emergency, intensified patrols all over the country. That can be done without a state of emergency. Bringing in the army to support the police service. That could be done without a state of emergency, because that is part of the role and function of the defense force. Having more roadblocks, which, by the way, I think is a very stupid move. Police officers, senior police officers in Trinidad and Tobago, they do not understand 21st century policing. Any roadblock that lasts more than 15 minutes becomes totally useless because of ways, because of criminal elements who have lead scouts. So anytime you have a roadblock for more than 15 minutes, all that you're doing is frustrating the life out of law-abiding citizens by you trying to show, look, we're doing something to make you happy. Trinidad and Tobago, the word public holiday goes hand in hand with roadblock. As soon as you hear public holiday, the police put roadblocks all over the country for hours. You have to be the dumbest criminal in the world to be caught with an illegal weapon or drug in a roadblock, because the roadblock will have traffic for miles in Trinidad and Tobago for hours, and you expect a criminal to stay there and wait until he gets to your point. So it does not work. The roadblock is something that is totally ridiculous. You do a roadblock, it's short and sharp. A hard hit, 15 minutes in a location, you move, you pack up, and you go elsewhere. That's how we did roadblocks in my era. The only thing that is different in a state of emergency is that it gives the soldiers powers of arrest to apprehend, which I think is dangerous, because not all soldiers are trained, they're not precepted, they're not regimental police. There's no need for that. The other thing is that it will give the police the opportunity to arrest persons and hold them indefinitely, and also to go into homes without a warrant. Why are you doing those last two things? You're only doing those things because of the lack of intelligence. So we should not call a state of emergency because of shortage of our intelligence. We need to lift our intelligence gathering, which is why we formed the National Operations Center, which was recommended by the Commission of Inquiry into the attempted coup. That's what caused the problem in Trinidad and Tobago in 1990. We had several different intelligence agencies all not working together, no synergy, no unification. One hand didn't know what the other was doing, and Abu Bakr just went all the way to the Red House. That is what was another thing that was shut down after I implemented it based on that recommendation by the Commission of Inquiry. So if those things are put in place, there's no need for a state of emergency. My final point on that is what happens is commissioners of police believe that the best way to show that we are doing our job is to lock up as many people as possible. Stephen Williams did that in 2011. 500 young Afro-Trinidadian men were arrested without enough evidence, and they took us to court, and the taxpayers had to pay the bill. This government have now tried a get out of jail free card by putting a clause 6 in the proclamation by stating that if you are held and your house is damaged, you cannot sue the state and you have to go to the president. That's not going to hold. The attorneys of these individuals will still go to the president and they will still test that court order because you still have a constitutional right. You can't break into my home, destroy everything, and say that there's a clause that says because it's a state of emergency, you can destroy my home and I can't sue the state. You can put me and arrest me indefinitely and I can't sue you for wrongful arrest. So my point is that as SOE was not required, it is going to affect the economy. Half of anyone who's a tourist who wants to come to Trinidad, why would you come to a country here and know that there's a state of emergency? People are going to pull back. It's going to pull back on tourism during the carnival season. It's going to affect investment. It's going to affect the economy, which, by the way, is a byproduct towards crime increasing. So obviously the government didn't think it through. But again, the person who was instrumental in this is the same Stuart Young that
Two things on that. Two things on that. One, the spillover effect. When we hear about state of emergency, and if the police and the soldiers are taking more stringent measures against those criminal elements, the spillover effect where criminals would just leave and go to other places, nearby territories. How should other nearby territories, countries, deal with something like that, especially during a state of emergency where they don't want to get caught and they just want to rest off for a little bit? Let's deal with that one. I have another question in relation to the state of emergency.
Yeah, sure. That's an excellent question, which goes to when I was Minister of National Security, I pushed heavily for CARICOM to understand we got to work together. The formation of a National Operations Center in Trinidad and Tobago, I was recommending that all islands in the Caribbean should have similar national operations centers. And what it does, it ensures immediate response and sharing of information and intelligence. So, for example, Mr. John Jones, who's leaving Trinidad and Tobago to head to St. Vincent or Grenada, we must immediately have that contact from our customs, our immigration, our police to send to yours, so that as soon as he lands, you all can know where he is, what he's doing, who he's going to meet. You can monitor him, you can track him, you can even prevent him from entering your country. Those are the things that are required. We don't have that. The impacts and the CARICOM, it has not worked. I know how to get it done, but there must be that cohesion, that collaboration, that sharing of information in real time, so that when you know where people are coming and going. I did that with NYPD because we had the same problems with Trinidad and Tobago persons of interest leaving here to get to Miami, get to New York, and New York police, Miami police would not know. It allowed me the opportunity to let them know, hey, this guy's on a flight, stand by, you know he's going to meet some questionable element in Miami or New York, you could take it from there. And they will do the same. When someone of interest in New York or Miami is coming to Trinidad and Tobago, they will contact us and we will know, listen, we need to stand by, something is afoot. That is how you share information. That is why we formed that National Operations Center. It was shut down and dismantled by the PNM government. It has not been used. It is a shell. We spent 10 million US for a world-class system that provides that coordination. 17,000 cameras. We can see everything that is happening. We can get every single distress 999 call. We can immediately link it to a police vehicle in closest proximity based on the area of responsibility to ensure a less than 5-minute response. That is how you deal with it internally. Externally, making sure that when you get that information, you pass it on to your CARICOM brothers immediately to ensure that they are aware of a clear and present danger of questionable elements.
So is smaller islands at risk right now, do you believe?
No, not really. I think what happens usually in a state of emergency is not that these guys will run and migrate, and they will probably stay low in specific places. But if they migrate and they move across, unless they have a foothold in that island, it's not that they're going to migrate to remain there to start their trade. They are well structured. They have a foundation in Trinidad and Tobago with their gang members, their contacts in the police service, in other arms of the public service. So it's not that they're going to migrate and end up in another island because of a temporary state of emergency. Hardly likely that there's a need for concern of that. However, I do insist that there must be proper collaboration between our intelligence agencies and other intelligence agencies in CARICOM, letting them be aware of persons of interest, questionable elements, persons who are known gang members, persons who have been charged, convicted, released, and they're going to your island, letting you be aware that this individual is
Right.
somebody
You
that
said
should be
earlier
monitored.
that you don't think that the state of emergency worked or should be put in place. But with the situation as it is right now, where the high rise in crime, everything going, the wrong direction, right? Had you, if you were the person or were selected or appointed to be in that position, what would have been your immediate steps?
Well, definitely not a state of emergency. As I said, a state of emergency is a byproduct to increase crime, because with a state of emergency, it can cause the increase in cost of goods and services. Eventually, when the state of emergency, you don't get the result, you will turn it into a curfew. It can close businesses, it can cause people to lose their jobs, it can cause goods and services to go up, inflation, unemployment, a byproduct to increase crime. So you want to reduce crime, so you put in something that can cause crime to increase in the long run, which is what happens in a state of emergency. So what I would have done is, again, as I mentioned, the National Security Alert State, which is what we did in 2013. For example, a soldier was shot at in Laventil, and I lifted the alert state from amber to red. I contacted the chief of defense staff. I said I want 120 soldiers, and he couldn't give me any nonsense, because I was a soldier. I knew you have 5,000 persons in camp for the last 34 years waiting for another coup. It doesn't work that way. Part of your role and function is an aid to civil power and to assist the police. Other politicians after me who are not qualified and understand the role of the defense force, whether it be Fitzgerald Hines, Keith Scotland, Stuart Young as previous ministers in the PNM government, they will get the world thrown over their eyes by the defense force. So even during the state of emergency in Trinidad and Tobago during COVID, not one soldier came out, not one came out to support me as the commissioner of police, because they brainwashed the politicians and say, well, the defense force don't need to come out for these things. I sent 120 soldiers into Laventil, and for 3 months, I think there was one killing, and that was a domestic violence matter. It was the safest Laventil ever was, because I locked down Laventil. I said, listen, not even the dogs stopped barking. The people in Laventil said they never felt so safe. And that was done without a state of emergency. So the point is, if you have 5,000 members of the defense force, 500 there in the air guard in Piarco you don't have a kite to fly. For those 500 should be out in the streets with the police. You have 1,500 in the coast, have a vessel, can bring them out to the police. You have 3 in different camps on standby. What are you on standby for? Trinidad has just encountered its darkest year. Half of them should be out. You're speaking about 3,000 extra legs coming there to support and complement the police service. Flood the country with manpower strength, not just in salient stations on standby, foot patrols, vehicle patrols, high visibility, a rapid response, bring back public trust and confidence, let people feel safe, put fear back in criminals, let them know that we are taking back this country. That is what I would have done, because no drug block, no neighborhood, no community belongs to any criminal element. That's what I did as commissioner of police. People fought me back because they said that Gary Griffith was affecting people's rights. Every single police officer who abused their authority, they were arrested under my watch. In fact, it was the highest number. I did not condone any act of abuse of authority, but it does not allow that you take a shot at me, I'm going to shoot back, and it's going to be a head or chest shot. When I did that shot, one kill, people were upset, but I knew exactly what I was saying. I was telling the police, you got my back end. I have your back. If they shoot at you, you go for a head on chest. Don't tell me about shooting your arm and leg. That's what that one shot, one kill. If you touch one, you touch all. I made it known that if you will come after any police officer, we are going to come after you and we're going to find you. That's why under my 3 years, not one police officer was killed in the line of duty. Now they're being used as target practice, because the same senior police officers, they are not on the ground. When it was Sealots Laventil, I will be the first person in the front line. I'll be prepared to take the first bullet. That is the type of leadership that the police want. That is what I would have done as Minister of National Security. That's what I would have done as Commissioner of Police. You're not seeing the ministers, you're not seeing the commissioners out on the streets during the state of emergency. They're going to stay in their garbodies, they're going to stay upstairs in the confines and safety of their offices, and that is going to affect morale, it's going to affect leadership, it's going to affect success, it's going to affect the productivity of the SOE. But as I said, if you did those things, there would not have been a need for a state of emergency.
Guys, again, we're chatting here with Gary Griffith. A lot of information. I hope Caribbean leaders are watching, because this you are an encyclopedia of policing, Gary. It's very informative, and I know people are paying attention. I want to talk about the resignation that we heard today, but before we jump to that, someone asked a question, and I think that it's important that we address this. The question is, how do delays in the justice system, such as long court backlog and lengthy trials, contribute to the crime and the feeling of impunity in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, it's a disaster. You imagine if somebody has committed a minor crime and the maximum sentence is 5 years, but you spend 7 years in remand. I mean, that is so unfair. It is sickening that people are in remand for a longer period than the actual sentence if it is that you went to court. Those are the things that must change. Trinidad and Tobago, our recidivism rate is among the highest in the Caribbean, and that is based on poor rehabilitation. So we take young persons, you put them into prison, there's not proper rehabilitation. Instead of counseling and training, you get them to rub shoulders with the most hardened criminals, and they come back out being more turned into a heavier criminal than when they went in the first place. So the concept of a prison is not just for punishment, but for proper rehabilitation. If we do not have proper rehabilitation, which is why, as the National Security Advisor, I drafted the Ministry of Justice for Kamala Persad-Bissessor. Unfortunately, she gave it to deceased Herbert Volley, who did not have a clue about how to run a Ministry of Justice. All that he did, and the person who replaced him, all that they did was to try to build more prisons and to build extra things. That is not what the Ministry of Justice was for. I drafted the Ministry of Justice specifically to deal with the problems of that long delay in our criminal justice system, where persons will be incarcerated, be in remand, and they cannot get their day in court. Where it is that young persons will go to prison and they will remain there for years without proper rehabilitation. Put in systems similar to, which is what I actually did as Commissioner of Police, where it is we had young persons and we were there to explain to them and the courts agreed that if it is that they are charged for a misdemeanor, instead of sending them to prison, it was something called crossroads, where we'll have 1,000 police officers we were training to be big brothers and sisters to 1,000 at-risk youths. So if you're caught for a misdemeanor, instead of you going to prison, you are now forced to work under the big brother of a police officer. He and she will be there to hang out with you, to speak to you, to go to a basketball game with you, to talk to you, to counsel you, to give you that degree of leadership and maturity of a role model that you may not have at your home because of some sort of what sort of issues you may have. Probably not a lack of proper parenting or persons who just don't care. Those are the things that are required. Those are the things that will assist greatly to turn young people away from the life of crime. But that Ministry of Justice was an ideal opportunity. Kamala Persad-Bissessor, unfortunately, she gave it to persons, and she's still boasting about having a Ministry of Justice. Not one thing of value was done for that Ministry of Justice. But I did the study, I did the research, I prepared it to be able to minimize the problems that would have reduced recidivism by improved rehabilitation in prison.
We've seen a lot of similar, well, not on the magnitude of Trinidad as yet. We're seeing gangs, we're seeing gun-related crimes in places like Grenada, Vieux Fort, St. Lucia, Grenada particularly, right? Do you see any trend in or pick up any trend? What's happening in the smaller islands like Grenada in particular, as what's happened and what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, in what way? You mean like of illegal
Yeah,
weapons
illegal
and
weapon,
so forth?
just crime in general.
Yeah, sure. Well, definitely, thankfully for the other islands in the Caribbean, they are not anywhere close to where we are at this time, and hopefully you'll stay that way. The best way to deal with that, however, is to properly monitor the movement of vessels and so forth that are leaving from Trinidad to other islands in the Caribbean. Because I see one of the callers, for example, asked, why were the OPVs and blimps sold during your tenure? Again, I wish people will read and do research. When the blimp and the OPV were sold, I was the National Security Advisor. I was not the Minister of National Security, so it was not under my tenure. The National Security Advisor had absolutely no political influence in those decisions. However, I ask all of you all, the OPVs were purchased from something called BAE in the United Kingdom. I ask you to type BAE/corruption, and you will find 17 countries have sued BAE for paying kickback to government officials, which is why the BAE vessels, we were going to purchase it for $2.4 billion, when it is that I did research as a National Security Advisor. I got proposals from Colombia, Israel, and Korea to purchase the exact type of OPV for 1.2 billion TT, which was $1.2 billion less than, which was over 200 million more that we were paying for the OPV. So what I did is I saved the country over $1.2 billion. The blimp was a Goodyear blimp. It was totally outdated. It was 20th century policing. You needed 17 soldiers to take a rope and hold it and pull it down to bring it back to earth. Welcome to something called the 21st century. IG wall. It is known as drones. So that is what I was acquiring instead of the blimp. Instead of the OPVs, I was able to acquire 12 diamond vessels to do the exact thing that the OPVs would have done for 1.2 billion TT less, inclusive of securing our exclusive economic zone, which was 12 to 200 miles off. So we did the exact thing the OPVs would have done for 1.2 billion less. And the reason I segued this into the question is this is what is required, making sure we have a comprehensive maritime security wall between all of the islands in the Caribbean, making sure we utilize the radar. And if any vessel leaves Trinidad and Tobago's territorial waters, inclusive of our exclusive economic zone, and getting into another island, we must immediately have the capacity to contact you all and let you all know this vessel is getting there, because our maritime capability is will be much bigger than St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Martin, other islands. But because of that, we must give you that. We have the radar. We are supposed to be monitoring this. And there's equipment now that if a matchstick leaves our waters and heads to St. Lucia or Grenada, we're supposed to pick it up and immediately contact you. It is not being done. And that is why I speak about the importance, all the impacts and CARICOM meetings, unless you have persons with proper qualification and training in law enforcement to secure our maritime borders, we are going to get loops, and those windows of opportunity is what the criminals use.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Guys, we're going to entertain a few calls. So we're going to open up the phone lines. The number that you can call is 718-701-5720. Having this very important conversation with Gary Griffith, the former Commissioner of Police in Trinidad and Tobago from 2018 to 2021. Also the political leader of National Transformation Alliance there in Trinidad and Tobago. Again, if you want to call, the number that you call in live is 718-701-5720. While we wait for that call, we're going to move in second gear and speak about the resignation of Keith Rowley, Prime Minister Keith Rowley. The impact on his resignation. Do you think that his resignation of the Prime Minister has raised question about, well, not do you think, that the resignation has raised question about his, about the political stability. How do you think that this would impact crime and law enforcement for the short and long term?
Yeah, sure. I worked with, when I was Minister of National Security, Keith Rowley and we had lots of conversations. He was the opposition leader at the time. And I saw the importance of working with him. In fact, it was the first time that an opposition leader was actually got state security. That never happened before outside of an election period, because I never saw politics. I never saw political, and even politicians on my side in government got upset with me for providing security for him. When he was Prime Minister, I understood the man had a genuine concern for Trinidad and Tobago. He had a genuine concern to try to make Trinidad and Tobago a safer place. Unfortunately, he was totally influenced by Stuart Young. Stuart Young had the opportunity where he really pulled one over his eyes. Stuart Young was the cause. He was removed as Minister of National Security because it seemed that he was very intimidated by myself getting close to the Prime Minister. Stuart Young was then removed. He never forgot that. And whispers went into the Prime Minister's ears. He took bait. He got false information. And then I was removed. So what we are seeing now that has happened, it was primarily because of Stuart Young's decision. Stuart Young did not want me as Commissioner of Police, and Trinidad and Tobago will remember that. Stuart Young wanted people like Earl Christopher as Commissioner of Police, and the country will remember that. So if Stuart Young has been the biggest reason for what has happened now in Trinidad and Tobago, and with Keith Rowley not being there, I believe it will get worse, because Stuart Young he may have a degree of management skill, but his leadership skill is one of, I think, vindictiveness, pettiness, immaturity, and he's not going to make decisions in the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago. If he gets personal with persons, I don't care who you are. If I believe that you can be of value to Trinidad and Tobago, my intention is to work with you. I don't care your political party card, not Stuart Young. Stuart Young has a degree, and even people within the PNM have the same perception about Stuart Young. So I think this is going to cause a degree of instability, not just in the People's National Movement, but in the governance of Trinidad and Tobago, because the government divided is going to cause serious problems. It is going to cause many people in the PNM to be very uncomfortable knowing the individual, how he operates. I think it may very well cause an increase in crime, because again, based on his decisions, and at least Keith Rowley was there to put a degree of control as much as he could, even though he was failing. But now there's going to be even increased failure, because the person who caused the failure in the first place has now been given more responsibility, more authority, and he will make more mistakes.
So what should have been done in this situation right here? Because we saw today that the Prime Minister, outgoing Prime Minister, basically gave his full endorsement and support for Stuart Young being the political leader. He's going to be Prime Minister. Should there be an immediate election? What advice would you have in this process?
Well, it is the first time in the history of Trinidad and Tobago that a sitting prime minister has decided to step down. Never happened before. Every prime minister has been removed because they said, okay, enough of you, or they died whilst in office. So this is the first time we had a prime minister who actually is stepping down whilst he is still in the throne. What should happen, the best bet, it is very uncomfortable, untenable even, for a situation of someone to be the political leader of a party and somebody who's the prime minister, and they're two different people. That can cause many issues. This is why Keith Rowley wants Stuart Young. He wants to make sure that there's proper transition, because I am the political leader of the PNM, but you are the prime minister of the country, but I put you there. So we'll have a good synergy. That has advantages to it, but the problem still lies. Keith Rowley is not going to remain as the political leader. So if it is that there's going to be a different political leader to the prime minister, that is going to be very uncomfortable. It's untidy. The best option for Trinidad and Tobago, and even for the PNM, is to have their internal election brought forward before the general election. Let the PNM decide, one man, one vote, who they want as their political leader. Who you want as your political leader is who you will want as the prime minister. The PNM is not a cow. It is not something that a political leader is just supposed to anoint somebody. That is what has happened here. It doesn't work that way in Trinidad and Tobago. We have seen this on several occasions. Basio Pandey tried that. I think he wanted Vasan Barrett to lead the UNC. Winston Dukran was initially the leader, and Winston Dukran fought, and because he represented that bridge constituency, that caused the split of the UNC that formed the COP. It doesn't work with Pandey trying to hand over the party to someone. It happened again in 2010 with Pandey, Kamala Prasad Sessa. She was at loggerheads with Basio Pandey. So we have seen this before. This does not work. We saw it with Patrick Manning and Keith Rowley. Patrick Manning did not want Keith Rowley as the heir apparent. Keith Rowley took his marbles, went home, caused total disharmony in the PNM, causing Manning to call an early election because of it. So we have seen it before, where people, they feel that they can anoint persons. They are uncomfortable by the person who's the most senior person now. They do not wanting that person, calling snap elections, splitting the party. This could very well happen if it is that unless the PNM is given that opportunity of one man, one vote. And I could give you the assurance there's not a snowball chance in hell Stuart Young could ever win based on a one man, one vote in the PNM. It is not going to happen. So Stuart Young is there by designation, by Keith Rowley, him anointing him. That it doesn't work that way for a political party. It's a temporary measure. So before it gets even worse, my strong recommendation for the PNM, not my business, I'll sit and drink water and mind my business, but for the PNM's sake, there should be an internal election to decide who is the de facto political leader, which means who the supporters feel should be the prime minister if they win the election.
Yeah. We saw that announcement here today. Gary, we're still waiting on call, but we'll dive into a couple more questions on we top of the hour already. Okay, I think we have a call. Let's see if I could get that call coming in right now on the WhatsApp. Caller, are you calling in for the program?
Yes, Junior, calling for the program.
Okay, where are you calling us? Go right ahead, caller.
Grenada.
Okay, yes, go right ahead.
I would like to ask the former commissioner of police a question.
Yes, do me a favor though. Before you start, hold on. Before you start, turn down your background audio a bit for me. I'm getting that feedback from your television.
All right.
All right, just turn. All right, go ahead, caller. Once you do that, just go right ahead with your question.
Okay. The question is that I want to find out from the former commissioner of police if he been elected as the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, what it is that he has in store for the young teenagers of Trinidad and Tobago, because we are seeing that the young teenagers in Trinidad and Tobago is the one that's stemming mostly on the crime situation in terms of robberies and the homicides, because they've been influencing from the elder heads who is probably sitting back home and making them do all this sort of work just for a little small change of a $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, you know, a little chain, probably some nice clothes or some kind of thing like that. What's he have in store for the young ones? And another thing now is, I don't think Keith Rowley is supposed to come live and say that he resigning from prime ministership from Trinidad. It's like he's saying to Trinidad and Tobago, all you could do whatever all you want right now. Because I come like a fed up, all you could do what all you want. And he's like, if he, as he said that, he make it look like the country has nobody in charge right now, because he resigned and he's like nobody in charge right now. So everybody just do it whatever they feel like.
Right. Thank you, caller.
Why. And then till the SOS, because I listened to what the former commissioner of police said, Mr. Gary, that you didn't supposed to have this SOS because it makes a lot of people from Trinidad who lives in Trinidad, who vacation in Trinidad, have to run out from Trinidad because of the SOS, because the SOS has a time span. And if things continue to escalate, it will go to 3 months. And a lot of people don't want to get stuck in Trinidad with these kind of escalating problems because you're not feeling safe. Because I have friends who was in Trinidad for holidays. They have to shorten their time to come back to Grenada and go to other countries because of what they mentioned, SOE, state of emergency. As he said, they have so many soldiers.
Right.
Too many soldiers there. They have too many soldiers. Soldiers just sitting home, who going and leave, who just sitting down in the barracks doing nothing else. Take all them soldiers and put them out in the streets and let them get work to do.
Right.
That's what they have to do. That is what they have to do, because a lot of Trinidadians are leaving Trinidad and going to the other neighboring islands and migrate.
Right.
And that is a problem for Trinidad.
All right. Thank you, caller, for your question and your observation. Listen to the response from Gary Griffith on the live.
Yeah, I think the main question is as it pertains to young persons in Trinidad and Tobago, and it is really straightforward. We have about a roughly $50 to $60 billion every year, our budget. At least 10% of that is based on corruption, mismanagement, wastage. And it starts even with state boards. The state boards where every single person who's appointed, there's no qualification, training, or knowledge, is based on the party card of the party that got in government. So we're speaking about hundreds of, and the reason I say that, what does this have to do with young persons? We're speaking about hundreds of millions wasted on corruption and mismanagement. And the same thing goes with every single, if it is that we put proper systems to deal with all of the mismanagement, the corruption, and then we go into the gangs that I speak about, where gangs are given state contracts. You give them 10 million TT to build a $1 million box raid. You take away that element of corruption and mismanagement, and you use those funds now towards providing just 10% of that could be used towards, we have roughly about 30 to 50,000 unemployed persons in Trinidad and Tobago. If I look at our unemployment rate, mostly would be young persons, 18 to 25 odd. You give them an unemployment check, give them something for them to get off the streets, and not just giving them a check for them to just to stay active, but you keep monitoring them to find a way for them to be employable either in the private or the public sector. Get in the private sector to be able to make sure you hire one extra person. Get in the public sector to see if we can find an avenue for these young persons. Having a proper social development program that will be in synergy with the Ministry of Youth Development to look at each and every young person to provide them with an opportunity for sustainable living. Not one person must be left behind. We cannot do that because we waste hundreds of millions in corruption, in kickback, in mismanagement, in gangs getting state contract. In other words, run your government like a business. Take away the corruption, take away the mismanagement. Use those funds towards the young persons. So many of them are on the streets, on the road, just sitting down doing nothing, smoking, drinking, involved in crime, wasting their life away. If they know that the state is willing to help them, every single young person, you will get, and it's not much, you give them 150 US a month, something just to sustain them for their basic livelihood, and let them use this to be able to utilize that to probably educate themselves, get involved in some degree of training, to get them to be able to have an opportunity to be employable either in the private or the public sector, bringing the private sector into it. That is how we deal with it. And by doing that, it takes away and minimizes the opportunity of these same young men and women turning away to a life of crime because they believe the state has sidelined them. My parents have ignored me. Nobody cares about me. But that gang leader, he really loves me and he cares about me. He's willing to give me money if I just decide to be able to transport something or put a hit on someone. That is how we can totally transform Trinidad and Tobago, by caring for the youths in this country.
Absolutely. We got another call. A very, very good point there, Mr. Griffith. We got another call on line. Caller live. Where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from Trinidad. I'm a Grenadian living in Trinidad, and I have a very interesting question to ask Mr. Griffith.
Go right ahead.
What does he think about, what is his views on Michaela Pandy's political party, the Patriotic Front? How do you think her presence in politics going to impact Trinidad's politics? And I mean, what are your views?
All right, thank you. Call.
Can I ask her before she comes off?
No,
can I ask
call
her,
her, because we're taking the call through the WhatsApp, she cannot hear you. But
can you ask her? Can she name one achievement or statement made by
okay, caller, he asked to give one statement that was made by Pandy.
Or an achievement that was done to show her leadership.
Which Pandy? Michaela?
Michaela, yes. Michaela, yes.
Michaela.
Well, I don't know much about her. I know about her father, but her.
There you go. That's my point.
Front. I would like to know what is his view on her new political party, and if he thinks that there could be a positive impact on Trinidad and Tobago's politics with her presence.
Okay, listen to his response on the live, okay? Thank you so much for calling. Yes.
So that was the reason I asked the question, and it's not my business, but if I am a citizen, I'm a voter, I want to know, what have you achieved? What have you contributed? What have you done? I want to remember, if Gary Griffith was a minister, Gary Griffith was a minister, Gary Griffith formed this unit, he did this, he put this law. When you ask, so if you want to vote for someone, you have to see what it is that person would have said, what they would have done, what they would have accomplished. She, I think, was a member of parliament from 2007 to 2010. What if anyone remembers any statement, any policy, any action committed? I think she has a political party for 5 years now. What major statement she would have made? So, but it's not my business to decide. I have respect for all persons who have agreed, who have decided to enter the realm of politics, but I think it is important that people need to understand that when you support politicians and political parties, don't do it based on the fact of what they have not done, but look at what they have also done. And you need to look at persons who are achievers, who have accomplished things. And because what we need is not talkers, but we need doers, we need movers and shakers. We need to have people who are willing, not just say, well, let's vote for this person because there's nothing dirty about them. We need to say, let's vote for this person because we have seen what they have achieved, what they have accomplished. That is my
Right,
take.
right, right. Someone just asked me a question here, and they want to throw that at you. They said, with what's happening in Grenada, where we continue to see, formation of gangs. There are some established gangs. There are some young groups of people calling themselves gangs. How do we eradicate that from the nip it in the butt stage?
Well, definitely, I will recommend to the Commissioner of Police that you gotta go straight into the belly of the beast. You can't just sit back and allow it to build. It is going to build, and when it builds, it will reach a point where you will not be able to control it. That is what happened in Trinidad and Tobago. We have reached that point, not of no return, but when it is, we have tens of thousands of illegal firearms. We have gangs who have so much. They have tens upon tens of millions of dollars that they could afford to protect themselves through the use of the protective services, defending them, certain arms, and the criminal justice system. You need to make sure you never reach to that point. You need to make sure that you can nip it in the bud immediately. Even if you have to use the broken window theory, you look at these persons who are gang leaders and you find an avenue, whether it is tax evasion, whether it is money laundering. I had a way. I will find something on you. If I know that you are an enemy of the state, I will find something that, and legally, to make sure that you will no longer be an enemy of the state. So you need to again use proper intelligence, find avenues, and bring those persons where they belong. I recall when I referred to these individuals as cockroaches. Again, another action. And I was trying to put a war of good versus evil, not politicians versus politician, but law-abiding citizens versus criminal elements. A man who rapes a 12-year-old child, you don't want me to call you a cockroach? A man who kills a woman, you're not a cockroach. A man who kidnaps a young boy, you're not a cockroach. Somebody who murders innocent people, you're not a cockroach. But we have so many people in Trinidad and Tobago that will try to defend these criminals. It is hoped that in the Caribbean, you all don't have persons that will deliberately try to defend these criminal elements because they will speak about their rights. We have reached a point in the Caribbean where I think the scales of justice have been tilted so much towards the criminal elements rather than the law-abiding citizens. We need to tilt that scale of justice back to make sure that the law-abiding citizens have a fighting chance. That is what is required. So I would recommend that the Commissioner of Police, they go hard. Do not sit back and wait for them to make the mistake. You go hard and you let them know, hey, nowhere belongs to you. This thing about a gang member, I have the biggest unit. I have numerical superiority. I could outgun you, I could outman you. You're not going to fight. You're going to fight a war with me that you're going to lose. Back off and find another trade.
Well, let's hope that they're listening, Mr. Griffith. I thank you, and I want to respect your time. We did say an hour. We're way past an hour, and I know you're very, very busy. Any closing words, Mr. Griffith?
I just hope everyone would appreciate the fact that we can turn this around, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but the Caribbean. The meetings that we have is very cosmetic. Ministers of national security and prime ministers having these CARICOM meetings on a regular basis. It is an ideal avenue for us to get to go to Barbados and Grenada, live in a five-star hotel for a few years and have a good time. That is not how it's going to be dealt with. You need to have the law enforcement experts from different parts of the Caribbean meeting together and coming up with a proper strategy to secure the Caribbean, making sure there's immediate information being passed, making sure that there's sharing of information, intelligence-led regional policing, making sure we can utilize the capacity of the maritime equipment that some of us have, some more than the others, the utilization of the radar, sharing of information. As soon as one person leaves Trinidad and Tobago and heads to your airport, you know about it before the person arrives. Politicians having their meetings that cost the taxpayers every year, it's not going to work. It serves no purpose. They have no training, knowledge, qualification in law enforcement or criminological theory. Get the experts throughout CARICOM, which is why that meeting that we usually have in December for the commissioners of police in Miami, it is a very positive aspect. We need more of that and less of politicians all talking. That happens, I think it can make the Caribbean much safer.
Thank you so much there, Mr. Griffith. And we really appreciate your expertise in this field of law enforcement. And we're looking to hear a lot more from you, especially coming up upon election. I know you and your political party will be contesting the election as well. So we're looking closely to see how that plays out for you. And best of luck with that. Thank you so much. We keep in touch.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right.